All right, let's get this thing started. We're 1 minute after the hour. It's so great to be with you today. I'm Tim Thompson. I'm the Chief Revolution Thinker at revThink, and you'll notice I'm not sitting next to Joel Pilger. We actually have Emmett Armstrong here today. Emmett, say hello.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being part of this, Emmett. I thought about doing this solo, but I honestly thought, you know what? You're helping people along this way, and I think some of these questions are even ones you've answered recently. So to drag you in, and like I said, you challenged me a little bit right before we started the webinar here, just to kind of think through one more item of things we can cover. But today we're talking about how to commission a salesperson. And we're going to unpack this conversation a little bit because commission itself, like the idea of why you should commission, why you shouldn't, what are our motivations when we're even thinking about commission? And then we'll see if we can't get into some nitty gritty of actually commissioning and showing some examples of commission deals. So that's where we get started. But Emmett, why don't you explain where this topic came from?
Yeah. Well, let me get us spotlighted properly. There we go. So we were thinking about the weekly briefing topic as we do, and there have been some great posts recently inside revCommunity about commission. And the first is a question from Dustin Schultz. And the gist of his question is that he has a team member who was a freelance producer that still has those connections. And he wants to know if that person brings work to my studio now, I want to reward them for that, right? That's above and beyond the producer role. It's a sales arrangement of sorts. And it seems like the producer has asked for a commission-based deal. And Dustin agrees that sounds fair. But then he's wanting to know, like, how do we do that? What does that mean? How do we just pay a bounty or reward them based on what they're bringing in the door? So that's the first question. Second question comes from Mike Greenberg. He's looking at more of the structure of those commission deals. He has a business development person, and the gist of his question was, do we split on the profit that's left over, or do we split on the gross of the sale? And how does that motivate him differently or motivate me differently? And should we go that direction, or should we just scrap that and propose some sort of different type of fee or a tier structure? So one of them was more generic or high level, and one was more tactical about actually how the deal would work.
Yeah, commission's so interesting, isn't it? Because we had this idea that a person's compensation might have a possibility of a different structure and build an upside to a deal, or somehow capture something different that your original deal took place. And we think commission's a really great way of making that happen. And to be honest, commission does have its place in that situation. But really the questions that I hear that are being asked, and are the most common questions, really are, why commission? Like, what is the purpose of commission anyways? What do we commission? And then how do we actually do the commission? So the why, the what, and the how are what we're going to try to dive in today and get a sense of, can we wrap our head around when it's even appropriate to commission or not commission, and then what's involved there. So again, just to kind of think through just the why would you want to commission to begin with. I think the example that we have from Dustin is a good example where it feels like someone is advancing beyond their original scope of work, and there's possibly something they can tag on to the effort they're putting in. And it's really this thought of like effort is what when we think about commission, we're thinking about something related to effort. So in that example, it's effort beyond the job they're currently doing. Maybe they get a little bit of a bonus, like a little bit of a kickback for that thing. So that's maybe commission structure is a good way to do that. Another reason people want a commission is to just reduce risk. They recognize, well, commission deals have a base plus commission. So if I were to bring on somebody, say in a sales role, and I don't know if they're really going to drive a lot of leads, especially in the first maybe 3 to 6 months, I'm going to be paying somebody, a flat salary for their time, and I'm not going to receive the rewards from it. And that person isn't, we know better if you're using the splits, but this hypothetical thinking is that person is not covered in those direct costs. So where does that money come from? Oh, I have an idea. Why don't I pay them commission, cut back some of that risk, and be able to give them something on the backside? When they bring work, they get work there. So there's that part of it is another piece of it. I think that the third piece that I'd be thinking is, as I call it, like flexible compensation. The thought there is, hey, I think you're going to be really, really powerful. I don't know what the high end is going to be. So if I set you up right, I commission you, you might be able to make $100,000 this year or $300,000 a year based on your effort. So that flexible compensation isn't necessarily, it's related to risk, but you might not be afraid of the risk, like what the burn rate's going to be before they start performing. You're really thinking about the upside. How do I meet the need as a working professional to keep it going? And then actually a lot of reps and salespeople, when they start working at your company, they start here. If they had an existing position, they're basically saying this part of it. Hey, I want my compensation to be flexible. I want to collect the wins with you if I'm going to bring work to you or not. But the big picture here, the most clear part of why we commission anything to anybody in the why category has got to be motivation. Really what the human behavior behind a commission is the thought of what you're going to get them to be able to do because you've motivated them with an extra piece. So in Dustin's case, he's saying, this is a good deal. I'm paying this person a salary already, but maybe if I motivated them to go after some other leads, it would be a win-win. I get new projects and this person gets a little bit of pay. If you have an internal salesperson, motivation's the same way. Our thought process is, if I commission you properly, you'll be more motivated to bring in even more work. And the last piece of motivation is something that you say, hey, I'm not really sure that I understand what your job is. Why don't you tell me? So if you're a sales rep, I don't necessarily understand what the job is because I'm new to the process. Why don't you tell me, and I'll base off of commission. So you're motivated to make me successful.
Tim, would you say this is akin to like a value-based deal where I'm going to pay you based on the value that you bring to me? And it's a little bit more flexible. It's a little intangible because I'm not going to tell you to write 6 emails a day. But the salesperson might know that if I do that, if I write 6 emails a day, I'm going to make more commission because I'll be more successful.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you're working with a sales rep or an outside salesperson that might be coming in-house, the thought process is exactly that. There is a value you're going to bring my company because, again, the thought process is I'm going to get different clients or more clients than I currently have. So my company grows. It's worth me making a deal with you that motivates you to go get it. And that value proposition, I believe, is what we hope for. And I'll say it again, hope for in a commission deal and a sales deal. But what you often find is that the motivation you're looking for might create a different type of behavior. So if you have your why down, you might be able to look to the how we commission and what we commission questions next to figure out, are these buttons I've put up here up front, do they match the levers I can pull to keep this machine going?
Right.
And that's usually where the conversation that you and I have when we're talking to our clients comes in. Most people understand how commission works. You get a percentage of the sales you bring in. There, I could do the math. Here's your money. But some of it is that kind of behavior pattern that you're looking for. Because if you are looking for motivation, you probably should set things up to, motivate somebody to get the results you want.
And my favorite thing that you said recently is that you shouldn't the way you said it just now was levers to pull. And if we're just talking about number of projects, you say, you win me 50 projects, that person's going to bring in 50 crappy projects. So you got to think about the levers that you've created and give yourself the right levers, not just volume, but quality perhaps, or dollar amount, and balancing it the right way.
Yeah, that's exactly the what qualifier, right? We're saying, I actually want to commission you on qualified projects. So that what part of it is a very big part of your commission conversation so that you're getting the right return when you put that deal forward.
Right.
Because you can imagine, and I've definitely seen this before without that clarity, a salesperson brings forward a project to a company, and it's not a bad project necessarily. It can even be a larger dollar sum. But when the company runs the numbers on what it's going to take to execute, they're not going to have a win. It doesn't actually match their need. That salesperson, and it's personality type, but also some of their motivation that says, you're taking from me. I brought you a lead, a $50,000 lead, which is a qualified lead, even with a qualified brand. How dare you? You should produce it differently because you're taking from me by not being able to accept this project. And so that what qualifier is very important when you're trying to create motivation. You want that person that's doing the sales to understand how you calculate wins and what those wins look like. So there isn't a confusion of why you would say yes or no to certain leads when they're looking at the same qualifiers you are. And actually that collaboration between production and sales begins to happen if you can get people on the same page. But also what can relate to live action versus post-production. If you have a company that does a lot of pass-through costs, you definitely shouldn't be commissioning those because those are not items you keep. So right. That what part is like, I'm not going to give you commission on pass-through. I'm going to give you a smaller piece of live action and a larger piece of post-production. If we are working with talent, or if it's under $25,000, there are things that you can put in place in that what category to kind of keep that person motivated, but on the areas where both win. It's a win-win proposition. So clarity there is really, really important. Yeah. So those two pieces to me, I think, are really the premeditation when you're thinking about commissioning.
Yeah. Excuse me. This kind of leads us to Mike's question about commissioning on, I guess, what would we say, top line revenue versus bottom line revenue?
Yeah, that's a what category right there, right? So let's just think about the behavior pattern of somebody that's being commissioned on the gross receipts of the business, opposed to direct sales that you're doing. And you should be thinking about this of what role do you want that person to play. So let's talk about the one on gross receipts, right? So the idea I would think to myself as a business person is last year I was a $2 million business. This year I want to be a $3 million business. Hey, I will commission you on the overall growth of the business, that $3 million. If we get there, you're going to make a compensation package that would motivate you. So that part makes that person really partner with you as a business owner to think about overall growth as a company, right? The bigger picture of it. But that person might not worry about the profit. They might not have visibility in the profit even. They're just saying, hey, look, I got you the 3 million. And you're like, yeah, but I spent 3.5 million to do it. I don't care about that. I got you 3 million, right? So that's a clear piece of it. If you're going to give somebody something on the gross, you want them to understand and collaborate with you with other big picture items. You'll also find that that's really helpful if you have a lead salesperson. So let's say you have a person at your company that's managing maybe another internal salesperson or outside reps. You want that person as a manager to collect some piece of gross receipts. But here's the rule of thumb. You don't have to make it the same. So if you wanted to say, hey, gross receipts, I'll give you 1%. And anything you bring in directly, I'll give you 2 more percentage points. So on a project you bring in, it's 3%. But when one of the other sales reps bring it in, it's 1%. That's a very viable deal. And it gets them an understanding of like, I want you to have some responsibility for others, but I actually want you to go get some jobs. Because the reverse can be true. If I'm giving you a percentage of gross receipts and you don't bring in any additional work, we're still $2 million. That a very easy blanket deal without any kind of nuance, I'd still have to pay you commission on money I actually already earned before you showed up. Right. So we want to be very clear of like how that works. The last one I think Mike was asking about is how about on the profit? And profit, it can be really good to commission the right people. The difficulty of profit is most people believe that profit is somewhat controlled, meaning like, well, if you could have got 4%, can you do 9%? And so that again, you get this sense of who's going to actually behave differently if it's based off of the profit. Sometimes some of the worst people to commission on profit are producers, because they basically push all design aside so they can be profitable, so they can bring home money. It's not their intention. It's just the behavior that comes. It's what you've pointed to. I want to motivate you towards this bottom line. So that what factor of like, what behavior am I going to get when I commission each piece of this value ladder? You're going to get different behaviors. And I always tell my clients this, you just have to choose the one you think you can control. So when I think about Emmett being my salesperson, I think about what's it like to work with Emmett? What's the easiest plan that Emmett and I can put in place where we both have a win-win? And if I don't think Emmett can handle the profit one, but the gross receipt one get us to the right direction for growth, I'm going to choose that because that's the best collaboration that we can put in place.
You know what? This is just a silly story, but when you talked about commissioning the producers on profit, it's like telling your artificial intelligence to keep humans safe or protect humans or whatever. And then they kill all the humans because if there are no humans, then humanity won't be harmed. So you do that to your producer, you say, make profit, and they kill the whole design power of the project because they want to make that profit.
Yeah, you can understand where there might be a key role, like a head of production that's doing the bidding. And you want to say to that person, you have a large responsibility in getting the bid properly. So if we make no commission because you didn't set the bid properly, your compensation would be affected. So there are people that are in certain production pipelines that you can say, hey, this would be a really good motivator. As a matter of fact, it's actually like a well-written balance of the compensation we're putting in place of if you behave in a certain way or I motivate you a certain way, I'm going to get certain results from you. But I also trust that you already know design has to win. So you're really getting what I'm saying, which is it's the bidding I want you to focus on, not crushing design or trying to find the cheapest resources. I want you to get the bidding properly. So you can actually, if in that leadership management role, help someone focus on the goal and then reward them along that way, you can get positive results.
Mm-hmm. And one thing we say at RevThink is that if we're going to give somebody responsibility, we want to give them authority to some extent as well. So you're not going to hold someone responsible for results that they have no authority over, because that sets the person up for frustration and burnout.
Yeah, exactly. I like to say it's better to give them all of the responsibility and all of the authority within the narrow window, right? So within this window, you can do whatever you need to do. That's the way you want to work. You just have to understand how that window works and how to measure the results of it. You know, a very unfair situation for somebody would be you've motivated them to behave in a certain way, but you actually can't capture the wins as they do it. So sometimes in this process, the problem you have to solve is how do we understand the measurement of those wins? And then how often do we calculate it to compensate people for it? So all those factors are a big piece of this commission deal. You can't just make a deal with somebody on the phone, hope they show up first day with the pencil sharp ready to just oversell and then get major commission. There's a management piece of this, and that's why we're pulling this trigger. So the last piece, let's talk about the how. I'm actually going to use a spreadsheet because I don't know, I think in spreadsheets. That's just, you know me, that's how I think. But I kind of wanted to show what it really means to commission somebody and some key factors when you're thinking about that commission deal, what you're looking for and why you want to motivate people using these, again, buttons and levers. I usually just build a spreadsheet. It's very simple this way. At the top, I have someone's annual salary, and I understand what that would be on a month-by-month basis, roughly. There's no taxes included in this one. I'll get back to this threshold deal in a second. I'll show you how this works. But then I also put what the commission deal would be, and then I break out just these items here into some scenarios. So the scenarios work like this. In this case, this is a post-production company. The total revenue they brought in is $250,000. We're going to commission this person on 3% of all the work. So their commission is going to be $7,500. If I take their annual salary and I add their commission, that's done right here, commission plus base salary. Here's what their total take home is going to be. And so on. I can look through this at 250, 500, a million, million and a half, and I can kind of see what the deal structure would be and their compensation would be on a scale by scale basis. I like to do this because as I change some of these factors, you're going to see some dynamic changes at certain kind of trigger points here. And here's I'll talk about that last. So that's the basic structure of how this commission deal works. Very easy spreadsheet to put out there, very easy way of seeing it. And you can see what the total compensation package would be. So if someone came to you and said, I really want to make $150,000 this year, and you're traditionally $1 million business. If you started with a $75,000 base pay, you have to recognize that you're asking someone to bring in $1.5 million more in work than you currently make, which would be 2.5 times your current revenue. Your company would have to understand how to onboard those clients, produce those projects, deliver those projects at 250% more so that you can meet the need of this person. That's your responsibility to understand what you're getting into. Otherwise, you might be talking to the wrong person at $1 million a year. Maybe 150 is not the right person. You have to find somebody that their compensation requirements would be less. Or you might have to change some of these other factors. So for example, to make this $100,000, now I can kind of recognize I really need to only bring in $500,000 more in sales in order to meet that salesperson's needs if I compensate them $100,000. Now, sure, and you'll notice here my monthly salary went up. One thing I like to point out is how much? From $6,250 to $8,033. That might be an easy bite to swallow. That difference there on a month by month basis might be easy to burn, to know that you're gonna get the results you want. Because here's a key factor, this monthly thing, you're gonna start seeing results within 3 to 6 months. So it's really that salary times your runway time, 6 months, is what you're putting into the deal. But your return on investment is another $1.5 million worth of sales, and you can recognize the overall lead there. So that's how this first part works here, just the salary. You can also kind of think of someone's commission. You can raise the person's commission to help them kind of meet that goal. Look at now at $1 million, this person make $150,000. So that's another way of doing it. But here's the part I want to point out now. Every time I change this number, notice down here at the bottom, this number also changes. What this is what percentage that one person's getting of the total revenue of the business. So at this person's salary at $100,000 and 5%, and you're a $250,000 company, this is very obvious. That one person will be making 45% of all the money the company is collecting, and so on. It scales itself down. So that's another part of what you're thinking about is, wait a second, how much should one person really take home with the revenue size I am in a business? So if I really was kind of looking at the scale here, 3% pretty appropriate, and 75,000 gets this range really between, say right here in the middle is what I'm aiming for, 11 and 8% is the range. I personally, we and the people I can consult, I never pay more than 8%. So I need to know I'm walking into a deal where this is very well covered, and I'm only talking about 8, 7, and hopefully 6 and 5%. Now that doesn't mean I'm cheap and I don't pay someone what they're worth. I'm just saying there are other ways of looking at the structure so that you can win. And here's this last part. I'm going to show you how this part works here. This is rarely exercised, and very few people even consider this, but this is called a minimum sales threshold. The logic behind it is this. Hey, as a business, I already make money. I already make $1 million a year without you as a salesperson. So the first $1 million is mine. I'm not going to pay you commission on the first $1 million. So I only pay you commission after that threshold, which is $1 million. So if I put $1 million in here, what happens is, oh, did I break it? Please tell me I didn't break it. Damn it. I'll try here. Wrong line.
There you go.
So you can see like all of a sudden, everything just shifted. Here's what happened to this sheet here. What I did is I'm taking this $1 million out before I calculate commission. So really right here at $1 million, it makes the most sense to look at. At $1 million, you're not above or below the threshold. You're exactly at the threshold, and your commission is 0 at $1 million. You haven't earned above that. So your total commission be 0. So the first $75,000 I give you in salary is covered by the first $1 million the company makes in sales.
Right.
But everything above $1 million, I want to commission you on. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Which also happens to equal the 8% figure that you're looking for.
Exactly right. Now I've found a balance between what this base covers, because that base has to cover something. So what does that base cover? And then I can calculate, wow, I'm actually finding that 5 and 6%. And here's what's cool. I've actually also motivated somebody while including them in the big picture. Because you notice my example here is on the gross receipts. So I can say to somebody, hey, as a company, I want you to be thinking beyond what we already do. I want you to have an understanding of what we're capable of doing. And then let's let's make a commission deal that matches that. So this minimum threshold to me kind of sets a standard and adds some clarity of what does this base include or not. I'm just going to bring up one more side item because this is often thought, why don't I just do 100% commission? And what they're saying is why don't I give them 0 here and pay them a lot here? If you pay someone zero a fee at all on a monthly basis, what I've learned is you've actually earned no right to talk to that person. If you're not paying somebody anything, why would they show up to your sales meeting? Right? They're just making commission. Whenever they find something, they'll send it to you, but they have no responsibility to you. So we want to give them something so that there's a return and an attachment of a monthly requirement to show up. But also that person does have to, wear clothes and makeup and drive a car. And if that person's lifestyle and needs are not being met by your company, one, they might not be the best representation for you because they're going to smell a little bad and not look right. But they're going to go find something else. Their loyalty to you will fall apart. And that's how sales reps work. They say, hey, I'm not going to charge you a lot on the front end. I want a larger back end, but my loyalty to you is scattered, right. And which is often a struggle we have with sales reps. So that last piece of how you do it, you have to, again, think about what's going to motivate them and what do you want to manage as you do it. I see there's questions. So.
All right. Arturo asked, should you be transparent upfront about possible commission opportunities, or should you just reward it without being prompted on top of existing responsibilities?
I think what's being asked is if you're talking about what's up front of possible commission opportunities, you're basically saying people that you can generate leads from already. And that's usually an interesting conversation with sales reps too. Who do you already know that you can bring in that we currently don't know? And also, who do we already have that I don't really need your help from? But it'd be nice if you could manage them so that even though we already have them as a client, they really need a connection with somebody. And it's either me, the business owner, or maybe you can do it. And that compensation piece would be there. But transparency is always great with a salesperson. Mm-hmm. There is this weird belief that if you tell somebody what your leads are, they'll steal them from you. And here's my saying, if they can steal them from you, you never had them to begin with, right? It's not, you're taking away all of the idea of responsibility and thought process that your client has and saying, well, that client mustn't be ignorant because it's the only way they're ever going to choose something is because we gave them the right reel. No. That client is looking across the board. And if you have to compete in other areas, it's not because you know the person's email address. That's never going to generate the final.
You had them on your spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Laura's asking, if someone that doesn't work at your studio brings you clients with the commission percentage you had set, and this client gives you work for a long time, does the commission change, or is it just a one-time instance for sending a client?
You're asking a what question. And again, the best way to answer that is how are you going to motivate somebody? There is something to say of am I still commissioning? There are some situations where people are getting commission on direct sales. And some of these deals get really tricky. I try to avoid them. But what you're doing is saying, I'll commission you only new leads. So anybody that I've worked with in the last 24 months, if you bring them in, I'm not going to commission you. Do you know what you create? You create somebody that doesn't follow up with his existing clients. They wait 2 years to follow up because that's the only time they're in commission. So you have to be really clear of what you want the role to be and what role you're going to play in it and how your operations and systems work with that salesperson to know really when and how to commission somebody. But there is something to say I'll commission you on the first project. You don't work for my company. I don't have a loyalty to you. You don't have a loyalty to me. I'm not going to perpetually commission you because really after the first project, I'm doing the work to keep the client in. So that I get paid for that. But thank you for the lead. Here's a little bit of a bonus.
Ed's asking, what do you consider to be a new client? I guess we've worked with house lists before, right? Where we say, this is already my client, and maybe there's a different rate or a lower rate for those clients.
It's actually the reason why I lean towards commissioning gross sales instead of this direct thing, because you do have to get into some very clear scorecards. Which clients did I have first? Which did you have? Really, and you have to have some kind of system of clearinghouse to know who to avoid, those are Emmett's, these are Tim's, those are David's, that kind of stuff. You have to have a lot of clarity if you're going to manage it. It does work at a large scale, but there's a lot there of like the first come, first serve issues you have there. Do I commission the person or the company? So is it all of Discovery is me, or is it only Charlie at Discovery that I'm going to be commissioned for, right? So a lot of those rules have to be worked out, and the more complicated it is, it goes that way. So that's why I keep it simple. I think there's one more in the chat, right? Or is that it?
I think Laura asked it in the chat and then also on
Okay, great.
So I think we're good to go.
So yeah, look at us. We got it done in exactly 30 minutes, but 1 minute after. I know I'm just touched the surface, but hopefully it gives you some understanding of just things to process and think about. And really the key factor, I'll just say it again before we wrap up. You have to be asking, why are you commissioning them? What is the motivation you're looking to aim for? And what motivation best matches the way you want to lead that salesperson and the tools and the structure you have in place? Here's one last piece of advice. You always have to reserve the right to change your mind. So you can say, let's start with this for a while. We'll do it for 6 months, 1 year. If it's not working, let's find something that does work and work alongside that salesperson. It's your investment into their effort that's going to get the greatest results. So you don't want to fight them. You don't want to combat them. You just want to lean into and gain and gain and gain everyone down the food chain. That's the best situations we've seen.
Love it. All right. Well, if you're not a member of revCommunity and you're listening to this conversation, we would love to have you. So go to revthink.com/community and we'll get you set up with an interview with our intake head of community, Connor. And Tim, do you have any closing thoughts?
My closing thought always this: we do exist so you can thrive in your business and in your life and your career. So if there's anything else that we can do or conversations we can have, please throw that forward. We love you guys in community, and the fact you gave us this topic this week was awesome. So anything we can do to meet your needs, we'd love to do it.
And keep it up. Keep asking questions because we will consider them when we're thinking about our topics each week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emmett, for being here. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.